way that it works is that first you're going to start with Sauron's turn, and then each of the heroes are going to get a turn in clockwise order until it comes back to another Sauron turn. Each of the turns, for the turn for Sauron and the turn for each hero, is going to be significantly different, with completely different steps and completely different things that the Sauron player is going to do versus what the hero players are going to do. Let's begin with the Sauron turn. The first thing is the Hero Rally step. And during the Hero Rally step, you're going to simply discard all the influence tokens that are in any location with the hero. So influence tokens are these kind of tokens. And so if there are any in the location with the hero, you're just going to discard them back into the influence pool, Sauron's influence pool. The reason you do that is that's how the heroes are going to disrupt the extensions of influence, and it also prevents the Sauron player from adding monsters into locations that already have heroes. The second step in the turn order is called the story step, and this, you're going to skip this on the first turn, but basically this is when the story markers move down the track. So you're going to move the hero's marker 2 spaces forward. Then you're going to look at the active plot cards that Sauron has. Is that going to zoom? This one's each plot card has this icon here. So this one says move the red marker 1 space. So I'll just move that one marker 1 space. And then if I had another plot card, you'd do that. If I had another plot card, you'd do that. That's called the story step, and again, that's skipped on the first turn. The next step is the plot step, which is also skipped on the first turn of the game. And in this turn, in this phase, the Sauron player can do one of 3 things. He can either play a plot card, which are these cards. He can play a plot card into one of the open spaces on the board, or, if he'd rather, he can discard an existing plot card, which would give him an open space on the board to play another plot card, although he can only do one of those per turn. So if he discards that card this turn, he cannot play another plot card until the next turn. And the third thing he can do is nothing. He's not required to play a plot card. So in order to play a plot card, he has to first of all, he has to have a number of influence in the pool, the influence pool, equal to this number in the top of the card. Let's see if it will focus. Looks like it's not going to. And he must meet any requirements on the card itself. Like this says, requires a monster token or minion within 1 space of the affected location. So he can either do Edoras or Minas Tirith, and so he has to have a monster token or minion within that space. If he does, and he has enough influence there, which in this case is 0, then he could play this card in an open plot space, and the next turn this would cause his marker to move differently. So that's the Sauron plot step. Again, it's skipped at the first turn of the game. The next phase is the event step, and so to carry out this step, the first thing you do is to determine who's dominant. So determining dominant, which side is dominant, means basically it means whoever's marker's in the lead. So this marker in this case is closer to the finale, so the hero players are dominant. The only wrinkle in that is that you also need to count how many spaces would it take for all of the markers of Sauron's markers to get to the Shadow Falls step. So in this case, the heroes are 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away from the finale, and Sauron, closest marker is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 away, so obviously the heroes would be dominant. But you also have to count how many spaces it would take for all of these to get here, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it would actually be 7 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, the heroes would still be dominant, but that's kind of what you have to go through to figure that out. Now, in a case, there could be a case where neither side is dominant. So, for example, if at the first turn of the game, for example, where all of them are on the start space, there's not going to be a dominant side. So once you know who's dominant, then you can draw an event card for the current age. So the current age is 1, because we don't have any tokens in the 2 space, so the current age is 1. And so if neither side is dominant, all you're going to do is draw 1 card and do what it says. If Sauron is dominant, you're going to draw 3 cards, and you're going to consult the priority numbers at the top. In this case, there's an 11, an 8, and a 9, and you're going to play the highest one. What this does is basically the higher the number, the more it favors the heroes. So in this case, since Sauron is dominant, then this is going to give the heroes a little extra so that it'll help them kind of catch up. Now, if the heroes are dominant, you're going to draw 3, look at the priority numbers, and use the lowest number, because lower numbers actually kind of help out Sauron a little bit more. So it's kind of a built-in way of balancing the game and making it more exciting. That's the event step. Before I go on, I want to look at some of these event cards in a little more detail. I've got 2 example cards here. So let's pretend we just drew this one. This is called the Courage of Erkenbrand. It's got some flavor text here, and then it's got some instructions. The heroes may remove up to 3 influence monster tokens from Rohan, or place 1 favor in Helm's Deep. So as soon as you were going through this card, you would do that. The heroes would either choose to remove up to 3 influence from Rohan, or place 1 favor in Helm's Deep. Then you look down here. This gives you, let's see if you can see this. This tells you a character and where they will appear. So Theoden appears in the plains of Rohan. So you would take the Theoden marker, and you would place it in the plains of Rohan, and it gives you again that the little circle marker to kind of give you a hint about where that's located. If this character is already out on the board, he does not move. He stays where he's at. Then it also gives you this. This is a favor marker and where you put it. So in this case, it says favor in Dunland. So you would take one of the favor markers and you would place it in Dunland. And again, there's another marker that kind of gives you a hint of where Dunland is located. Here's another one. This one's Arwen's message to her beloved. This affects Weathertop. So you would take the little green marker here and place that on Weathertop. After a hero explores there, he gains 1 favor and receives training, and then discard this card. And then you would put Aragorn in Weathertop, and you would put favor in Lothlorien. The other reason I wanted to show this card as well is because it has this little green icon here, which means that this card, after you resolve it, is going to go up here into the space. And then this would go to Weathertop, which you can see my lack of knowledge. I'm not sure where Weathertop is. But you would find Weathertop and you would put this there. So that's kind of how you resolve event cards. Okay, the next phase is Sauron's plot phase, which is basically the meat of the Sauron player's turn. That's going to focus on this area of the board, which we discussed a little bit previously, but which I'll go over in more detail now. So what the Sauron player is going to do is he's going to take 2 of these tokens, or if you're playing in a 4-player game, which we're simulating here, he's going to take 3 of those tokens. And then he's going to place them to the leftmost of one of these 3 actions. There's either the influence action, place influence action, the draw cards action, or the move minions action. And he's going to choose which one, and he's going to place it there, and then he's going to do that. And like I said before, so on this turn he would say he did this. The next turn, he would take, he's only got 1 token, but he would either place it there, and since that's the 4th token, he would take up the other 3, and now he would, And then he's already done one action. He has two more, and he would place them. Now he could go either there or there. You see how that works. It's again, it's diminishing returns on trying to do the same thing over and over. So let's look at each of these actions in more detail. Okay, the first action is the place influence action. And it says on the board, I'm not sure if you can read that, gain X influence. So in this case, it's 6. So I would take, out of the influence pool, I would take 6 influence. And there's actually a lot more influence tokens. I only put some of them out. Now, it says you may place up to 2 of those in the shadow pool and the rest an extension of your shadow strongholds. So I could put 2 of them in my shadow pool, leaving me 4 more to put in extensions of my stronghold. So I've got several strongholds. Here's Barad-dûr, here's Dol Guldur, and okay, I lied. I have 2 strongholds, and each stronghold has a number at the top, which is the maximum number of influence tokens that I can have in that stronghold. See, in this case, I have 2. So I mean, I could put all 4 of these in that stronghold if I wanted to. My other option is to put it in locations that are extensions of the stronghold. So basically, I can track a path back to that stronghold. Now, the limit on these, the number of tokens in locations that are an extension to your stronghold are equal to the number of tokens inside the stronghold. So in this case, it's 2. So I can't have more than 2 tokens on any location that's in an extension to that stronghold. Now over here, I've also got 2, so I couldn't have more than 2 that are an extension of this stronghold. So I could put, let's see, I could put 1 here at Dol Guldur, which would allow me to put 2 more in these, stuff like that, until I've placed all my extensions. I mean, all my influences as extensions. Now, the reason you want to do that is to make locations perilous for the heroes, to protect your plots, to allow you to move minions, to place monsters there. So there's a lot of strategy in where you want to place your influence. Okay, so that's the influence. That's the influence action. Now the draw cards action is even simpler. It says you draw, in this case, 2 shadow cards. So I'm going to draw 2 shadow cards and 2 plot cards. Draw 2 plot cards. Place all but one of the plot cards on the bottom of the plot deck. So basically, the shadow cards that I drew get to go into my deck. The plot cards I drew, I get to look at both of them, and I get to pick one, and I put the other one back at the bottom of the plot deck. So that's the draw cards action. The last action is the command minions. This says command up to 3 minions and monster tokens. You may not place more than 1 monster token. So I have 3 commands. And a command, I can move a minion 1 space, and minions can pretty much go anywhere they want to, as long as they follow the line. But they can move to any. Well, I just didn't follow the line there. But you can move to any adjacent location. You can move a monster token. Well, let's go over. You can bring a monster token onto the board. So let's say I wanted to bring one here at Gladden Fields. So I would draw a green marker. I would secretly look at it. Oh, it's not really even a monster, but I'm going to pretend it is to bluff the heroes, and I'm going to put it there. So that's one of your commands. So you can command a minion to move. You can bring a monster token on the board, or the third thing is you can move a minion token. Now, this is a bad example because you can't give a command to the same. You can't give more than 1 command to the same monster token in the same turn. So you can't bring a monster on and then move it, even if you have 2 commands left. You have to bring a monster on and then move an existing monster. Since I don't really have any existing monsters on the board, we'll just pretend that this one has been here a turn, and you can move it to any adjacent. Oop, that's a bad example. Move it to any adjacent location that has at least one influence token on it. That's why you want to spread these influence out so that you can move your monsters to different places, because the location that the monster moves to has to have one influence token on it. Okay, just to clarify, that minions can move to any location. They don't have to have an influence token. And both minions and monsters can ignore the movement symbols when they're moving. Anything that's connected is adjacent, and they can move to any adjacent location. So those are the three actions that Sauron has. Before I move on, let me look at one more thing. I've mentioned drawing shadow cards, but I didn't actually mention playing shadow cards. So to play a shadow card, you're going to have the number of influence in your shadow pool equal to the number here in the upper left corner. Now that doesn't mean you're spending that influence. So in this case I have 4. I couldn't play this card. Let me see if I can find one. Aha, here's one. Storms of Mordor. It has a 4, which means I have 4 tokens in my pool. I can play this card. Now when I play this card, those tokens don't move. They stay in the pool. That's just basically limits the powerful cards to when you've invested enough in your pool that you're powerful enough to play those cards. Now the other thing you have to do before you can play a card is make sure that you meet the timing requirements on the card. For example, this one says play during your action step. So I can only play this during my action step. This one also says play during your action step. Let's look at some of the others. Play after a hero is defeated. And then so if you meet this number, you meet the timing requirements, then you do what the card says basically. The other thing to remember about shadow cards is that you can only play one shadow card per player turn. So if you've already played a shadow card during Eleanor's turn, you can't play another one even if you meet the timing requirements on that card. Okay, so the last step in Sauron's turn is the player draw step. And that's another simple step where the heroes are just going to draw up, each hero is going to draw cards from his life pool equal to his hero's fortitude. And there's no limit to the number of cards that a hero can have in your hand, and they're not required to draw cards during this phase. So they're only going to draw cards if they want to. So they'll draw cards from their life pool, which is this card, into their hand, and it's equal to their fortitude, which in this case would be 5. And that's the end of Sauron's turn. Now we move on to the first hero's turn. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the Sauron player is going to get a turn, and then we're going to go clockwise around the table, and all the other players are going to get one hero turn until it comes back around and we do another Sauron turn. And this is going to continue until one of the plot markers reaches the finale space. So we went over the Sauron turn. Now let's go over the hero turn. The hero turn is also displayed on the board itself. The first step is the rest step. Now that means if the hero is in a location that has no monsters or no influence tokens, I believe it's no monster tokens or minions. So if there's no monster tokens or minions in their space, in the hero's space, then they can rest. And what that means is they're going to take any cards that are in their rest pool, and they're going to basically pick them up and shuffle them back into their life pool. And then they're going to put all of those cards down into their life pool. Then they're going to advance the leftmost marker of Sauron's one space forward. It's kind of a penalty for resting, for having to rest. And if there are markers, like in this case, where their markers are on the same, the leftmost marker is a tie, then they get to pick which marker they want to move. The only wrinkle to that is that if the player, which like in this case is actually in a Free People stronghold, which has the castle design, the White Castle of course, not the evil Black Castle, then they can also heal, which means they can take their cards from their rest pool and any cards in their damage pool and shuffle them all back together. Another thing the hero can do in this phase is discard any corruption cards that he might have. Like in this case, let's say the hero is despondent. Oh, I hate when that happens. So this card has a 3 favor here. If he had 3 favor markers, he could discard those favor markers back to the favor and character's place on the board, and he could discard this corruption token or corruption card. So that's the rest step. The next is the ambush step. That means that if there are any monsters or minions in the current location with the hero, then Sauron is going to get to pick one of those and they're going to do combat. And if the hero is defeated in that combat, that's the end of his turn. So we'll look at combat a little bit more later, but that's the ambush step. The next step in the hero phase is the travel step, and this is where most of the action is going to occur on that hero's turn. Hero can travel as many times as he wants. He's limited only by the number of cards in his hand. So let's say Argalad starts out here at the Woodland Realm. Basically, what he's going to do during his travel step is move to adjacent locations, and then do things in that location. So to move, hero is going to have to discard a number of cards from his hand. So let's say this is Argalad's hand that he drew during Sauron's turn. He's going to look at these little icons down at the bottom of his cards, and he's going to compare those to the icons around him. This icon, each one has a number plus a little terrain type icon. That means that to move to the forest realm from the woodland realm, he's going to have to either discard a card with a forest icon, or he's going to have to discard 2 other cards because it says 2. So let's say he wants to actually go to the forest road. So it's the same thing, a forest or 2 other cards. So he discards a forest card into his rest pool, and he moves there. Now the next step in the travel phase is the combat or peril. Now this location is not a perilous location. It doesn't have the little jaggedy things around it, and there's no influence token. So it's not a perilous location, and there's no monsters, so he's not going to have to do any combat or peril. Now the next thing he can do there is he can explore, which that means if there were like a favor token there, he could pick it up. If there were a character there, he could interact with them. However, one of the cards say if he had a quest that had something to do there, he could complete that quest following the instructions on the quest card. If there were one of Sauron's plot markers in that space, he could look at that plot card and do whatever it says to disrupt the plot, to discard the plot. And if there were, let's see, discard plots, retrieve favor, consult. He could trade with heroes. If there was another hero on this space, they could trade cards. And then the last thing is he could choose a dark path. Choosing a dark path is kind of a risky maneuver, but it could pay off. Basically, if you have 3 or fewer corruption cards in front of your character, so let's just say he's both hopeless and cowardly. If you have 3 or fewer of these, which he does, he can draw a new corruption card. In this case, he's deranged. His wisdom is reduced by 1. But then he gets 1 favor. Now he can only do that once per turn. No matter how many times he travels, he can only do that once per turn. But if you really need favor, that's a way you can kind of sacrifice your own morals, your own mental stability for a little bit of favor. Okay, so he's done that. Now he can do it again. So if he wanted to move into Rosgobel, he would look at this. Okay, he needs to discard 1 forest or 2 other cards. Okay, so he'll choose to discard this forest, and he'll travel there. Now, this card does not have a monster, so there's not going to be any combat with monsters, but it's got 3 influence in it. So what we do is we look at our wisdom, in this case 2. That means that there has more influence in this location than his wisdom, which means it's a perilous location. Okay, when a hero moves into a space that contains more influence tokens than his current wisdom, then the Sauron player is going to draw 3 cards from the peril deck, and he's going to choose one of those cards to inflict upon the hero. Now, the hero's current location has to match the location that's listed at the top of these cards. So, for example, this one is the Ruins of Angmar. Well, I am currently in Rosgabel, so I can't use that one. This one says any location in the Brownlands or Mordor, which I am not, so I can't use that one. So in this case, you can see that Sauron didn't really have much of a choice. He has to use this one, which says any location. For example, this one says the hero must choose to either lose 2 favor or have Sauron draw 2 corruption cards and choose one for the hero to receive, discarding the other. So you can see that's pretty bad. Okay, so after he goes through that peril phase, then he can explore just like he did in the last one. So he can take up any favor, he can talk to any characters, that sort of thing. Now we can just keep on going if we wanted to. Let's say we wanted to move. I'm going to rearrange this a little bit. Let's say I wanted to move over to Gladden Fields. Well, this icon, it's a little brown square, means that I just have to discard any one card. So you can see that that's the other type of icon. There's the any card icon, there's like mountains, hills, and then the only other thing is the blue lines are rivers, which act just like any other connection unless you have the boat item card, which lets you go down those a lot faster. Okay, so I'll discard, let's see, any one card, and I'll move there. Okay, now we've got a monster token and it's a perilous location. In this case, Sauron is going to have to pick one. He's either going to fight with the minion, the monster, or he's going to make the location perilous. So in this case, Sauron knows that this isn't really a monster, so he's going to choose to make the location perilous, and he's going to draw 3 peril cards and choose one. But if he didn't, he would flip over that monster, and we would have combat. And if the hero is defeated in combat, then his turn ends. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about, then the last thing is, after the hero has moved around as much as he wants, let's say he somehow got out of that mess and got over here to the Redhorn Gate. I did want to mention one other thing before I do that. Some locations, like Dol Guldur, has the spiky bits around it, and like Moria has the spiky bits. That means that location is always perilous. Even if there's no influence tokens on it, you still have to go through the whole peril deck if you spend some time there, because Moria is dangerous. Okay, so after you've moved all you want to, he's ended up in the Redhorn Gate. Now this is not a perilous location, so he's going to have to do an encounter. Okay, when a hero needs to do an encounter, he's going to look at where he's located, in this case green, in the Redhorn Gate. He's going to find that location deck, in this case the Misty Mountains, and he's going to draw 3 cards from that deck. Now he's going to look at the locations at the top. Gladden Fields, well, I'm not in Gladden Fields, I can't do that. Any location in the Misty Mountains, okay, I could do that. The Forest Trail, I'm not in the Forest Trail, so I can't do that. So he would resolve this card. Now if there were multiple cards that, like if 2 of them had to do with the same location, then you would use the one with the lowest priority number. In that case, he would do this one. But since this is the only one, he will resolve this card. Then this basically gives him a new quest, where he can explore the South Eaves and gain 2 favor and shuffle the rest pool into your life pool. So he would put that quest here with his other quests, and then he could complete that in a later turn. Okay, so just to recap, the player's turn consists of a rest step. If you're not in a location with a monster or a minion, you can choose to rest, which means you get to pick up your rest pool and reshuffle them into your life pool, but you have to move the Sauron marker 1 space. If you're in a stronghold, you can actually heal and do the same thing, only use your life pool and your damage pool and your rest pool. The next step is the ambush step, where the location that you're currently on, if there's a monster or a minion, Sauron's going to choose one of those for you to fight. And then you get to do your travel step, where you get to move to locations. You get to either deal with the peril at that location, the monster at that location, and then you get to explore that location. And then finally, when you're done with that, you have an encounter with the location that you're currently on, as long as it's not perilous. So that's the hero step. After you're done with that, you move on to the next hero and they do the same thing. Then the next hero, they do the same thing. Then back over to Sauron for another Sauron step. And that continues until you somebody hits the finale, and then you determine if you have a winner. If not, you have the final battle. And that's basically Middle-earth Quest. The only thing I want to go back over, I think we covered travel pretty well, but I want to look at the combat mechanics. So next up, we're going to look at how combat works.